My sister slapped me in front of 150 people at her wedding because I wouldn't give her my penthouse. Turns out a judge was watching. The crystal champagne flute trembled in my hand as I watched my sister Vanessa glide across the polished marble floor of the Ritz-Carlton Grand Ballroom. Her custom Oscar de la Renta gown flowed behind her like liquid ivory, and 150 guests had gathered to witness her fairy tale wedding to Ethan, a successful hedge fund manager she'd met just 9 months earlier. I couldn't help but notice the irony. She was marrying for money while demanding mine. I'm Daniel Reynolds, 34 years old, and I've clawed my way to where I am today. While Vanessa spent her 20s bouncing between yoga instructor jobs and failed relationships, I was grinding through 80-hour weeks at Stanford Law, then putting in brutal hours at a top Los Angeles corporate law firm. 3 years ago, I took the biggest gamble of my life, leaving my 6-figure salary to start my own practice specializing in intellectual property litigation. It paid off beyond my wildest dreams. 6 months ago, I closed a patent settlement that netted me enough to buy a stunning penthouse overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Floor-to-ceiling windows, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a view that made grown men weep. Everyone suddenly wanted a piece of what I'd earned through blood, sweat, and countless sleepless nights. Daniel's sweetheart, you look absolutely dapper. My mother, Margaret, approached with that saccharine smile she reserved for moments when she wanted something. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and she wore an emerald dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. We need to have a little family chat. My stomach dropped. Family chats in the Reynolds household never meant good news. Mom, it's Vanessa's big day. Can't whatever this is wait until? Actually, no. My father, Gerald, materialized beside her, his expression stern. At 62, Dad still commanded respect in his tailored Armani tux, but his eyes held that familiar disappointment that had followed me since childhood. We've been discussing your living situation. My living situation? I set down my champagne, realizing I needed both hands free for whatever was coming. What about my living situation? Well, honey, Mom's voice took on that sickeningly sweet tone. You know how Vanessa and Ethan are planning to start their family. They're going to need more space than that cramped studio Ethan's been renting in Pasadena. I blinked hard. They're not even pregnant yet, Mom. But they will be soon. Vanessa's voice rang out as she joined our little circle. Her new husband's arm wrapped around her waist. At 29, she was undeniably beautiful with flowing blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, but her expression held a calculating edge that made my skin crawl. We're planning to start trying on our honeymoon. Congratulations, I said carefully. I'm sure you'll find a wonderful place to raise your family. We already have, Vanessa replied, her smile radiant. We want your penthouse. The words hit me like a physical blow. The elegant ballroom seemed to tilt sideways as laughter and conversation swirled around us. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. But as I looked at the expectant faces of my family, my parents nodding encouragingly, Vanessa beaming with anticipation, I realized this moment had been orchestrated. They'd planned this ambush at her wedding, thinking I'd be too polite to cause a scene. They'd chosen the wrong battlefield. Excuse me? The question came out barely above a whisper. Now, Daniel, before you get all defensive, Dad jumped in, his voice taking on that patronizing tone he used when he thought he was being reasonable. Think about this logically. You're a single man. You don't need all that space. Vanessa and Ethan, on the other hand, are starting a family. They need room for children, for their future. You want me to give up my home? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The home I worked 3 jobs to afford. Not give up, Mom hastily corrected. Trade. You could take Ethan's studio. It's perfectly adequate for one person. A 500-square-foot studio in Pasadena? I asked incredulously. You want me to trade my 3-bedroom penthouse in Santa Monica for a studio apartment in Pasadena? Daniel, don't be so dramatic, Vanessa chimed in. It's not like you even use all that space. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? You don't even have a girlfriend. The comment stung exactly as she'd intended. Vanessa had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. When she dropped out of UCLA to find herself, they called her adventurous. When she changed careers every 6 months, they said she was exploring her options. When I graduated summa cum laude from Stanford Law, they worried I was working too hard. I need those bedrooms because it's my home, I replied, my voice rising slightly. I earned it. I paid for it. And I'm not giving it up. Daniel Gerald Reynolds. Mom's voice turned sharp. That is incredibly selfish. Family comes first. Always. Family? I laughed bitterly. When have any of you ever treated me like family? When I needed help studying for the bar exam, you said I was being antisocial. When I started my own firm and was struggling, you said I was being reckless. When I finally succeeded, you acted like it was luck. That's not true, Dad said. But his voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? When was the last time any of you asked about my life, my work, my happiness? But the moment I have something you want, suddenly I'm family again. Vanessa stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. You know what your problem is, Daniel? You've always been jealous of me. You can't stand that I'm getting married, that I'm going to have the family you'll never have. I'm not jealous of you, Vanessa. I'm disappointed in you. Disappointed? She laughed harshly. You're disappointed in me? I'm the one getting married. I'm the one who's going to give Mom and Dad grandchildren. What have you done besides make money? I've built a life, I said quietly. I've worked hard for everything I have. I've never asked any of you for anything. Well, now we're asking something of you, Dad stated firmly. Your sister needs that penthouse more than you do. It's time you did something for your family instead of just yourself. Gerald's right, Mom said, her voice rising. Selfish children don't deserve success. You've had everything handed to you, and now you won't even help your own sister. The accusation was so absurd, I nearly laughed. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. Handed to me? The question hung in the air like smoke. I worked 3 jobs to pay for law school. I lived on ramen noodles and instant coffee for 2 years while building my practice. I've never asked you for a single cent. Your sister's children need real homes, Dad said loudly, his voice carrying across the ballroom and causing several nearby guests to turn and stare. Not some cramped apartment. They deserve better. They're not even conceived yet, I protested, but I could feel the battle slipping away from me. My family had always been masterful at making me feel guilty for my achievements. Vanessa moved closer, her voice low and venomous. You know what, Daniel? I'm done pretending to care about your feelings. I've always known I was the better child. I'm more personable, more likable. I'm the one who makes Mom and Dad proud. And now I'm finally getting what I've always deserved. The words hung between us like a challenge. Wedding guests began to gather, sensing drama. Some were openly staring now, their conversations dying as they focused on our family argument. What you've always deserved, I said softly. And what exactly is that, Vanessa? Everything, she replied simply. The penthouse, the respect, the life you've been hoarding for yourself. I deserve it all, and I'm finally going to get it. Over my dead body. The slap came so fast, I didn't see it coming. Vanessa's palm connected with my cheek with a sharp crack that echoed across the ballroom. For a moment, the sound seemed to freeze everything. 150 guests fell silent, their conversations breaking mid-sentence as they turned to watch the scene unfold before them. Then the laughter began. It started with a few scattered chuckles from Vanessa's sorority sisters, who had always looked down on me for being too serious, too focused on work. But it spread like wildfire through the crowd. Guests who didn't even know me were laughing, pointing, whispering behind their hands. Did you see that? She actually slapped him. About time someone put Daniel in his place. I always knew he was arrogant. My cheek burned, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Instead, I stood there feeling the weight of 150 pairs of eyes on me, listening to their laughter, their whispered comments, their judgment. Vanessa smiled triumphantly. Maybe now you'll start acting like a real brother. Mom and Dad stood behind her, not apologizing for their daughter's actions, not defending me. They just watched, waiting to see if I'd finally give in to their demands. That's when I realized something crucial. This wasn't just about the penthouse. This was about keeping me in my place, reminding me that no matter how successful I became or how hard I worked, I would always be the disappointment. The one who didn't matter. But they had made one critical mistake. They had humiliated me in front of 150 witnesses, including some very prominent figures from Los Angeles' legal and business communities. People who knew me, respected me, and had just witnessed what I was capable of enduring. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my phone. My hands surprisingly steady despite the rage coursing through my veins. Without saying a word, I began typing. "Daniel, what are you doing?" Mom asked nervously, her earlier confidence wavering. I ignored her and continued typing. The laughter around us began to fade as people noticed I wasn't reacting as expected. I wasn't crying or running away in humiliation. I was doing something else entirely. "Daniel, put that away," Dad commanded. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said quietly, still typing. "I'm not the one who should be embarrassed." Vanessa tried to grab my phone, but I stepped aside and hit send just as her fingertips grazed the screen. "What did you do?" she hissed. I looked up at her, my parents, and the crowd of guests who were still watching us with undisguised fascination. "I chose the revenge that will silence you forever." Their confused expressions were almost comical. They had clearly expected me to either give in to their demands or break down crying. They hadn't expected me to fight back. My phone buzzed with a response. Then another. Then several more in rapid succession. "Daniel, what did you send?" Mom's voice became shrill, panic creeping in. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt all evening. I sent a message to my group chat. You know, the one with all my lawyer friends, the journalists I've worked with, the business contacts I've made over the years, the people who actually matter in this city. Vanessa's face went pale. "What kind of message?" "Just a little update about tonight's events. How my family demanded I give up my penthouse to my sister and her new husband. How my mother called me selfish for wanting to keep what I've worked for. How my father said my sister's hypothetical children needed real homes more than I do. How my sister slapped me in front of 150 people because I wouldn't hand over my life's work." The ballroom had gone completely quiet. Even the string quartet had stopped playing. I also mentioned how everyone laughed when I was assaulted. I continued, my voice carrying clearly over the silence. How amusing they found it that a successful man was being put in his place by his family. "Daniel, you need to delete that right now," Dad warned, his voice dangerously low. I shrugged. "Delete what?" "The truth." "Too late anyway. It's already been shared. You know how social media works, Dad. Once something's out there, it's out there forever." My phone was now buzzing continuously with messages of support, outrage on my behalf, and requests for more details. The story was spreading faster than I had anticipated. Before my parents or Vanessa could respond, a commanding voice cut through the silence. "That's enough." All heads turned as Judge Whitmore, a highly respected figure in the Los Angeles Superior Court, stepped forward. I hadn't even realized he was a guest. He looked directly at Vanessa, then at my parents, his expression severe. As an officer of the court, I cannot remain silent while witnessing such behavior. Striking someone is assault, no matter the circumstances. And to demand property under duress. That borders on extortion. The color drained from Vanessa's face. "You should all be ashamed," Judge Whitmore continued. "This man has clearly worked hard for his success, and instead of supporting him, his own family publicly humiliates him. This is not just disgraceful, it's legally questionable." Whispers rippled through the crowd. The laughter was gone now, replaced with unease. Guests shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had sided with the wrong people. Mom stammered, "Judge Whitmore, with all due respect, this is a family matter." "No, Mrs. Reynolds," the judge interrupted sharply. "When you strike someone in public and demand they hand over property, it ceases to be a private family issue. Consider yourselves fortunate if Mr. Reynolds doesn't press charges." The balance of power shifted instantly. For the first time that night, I felt the upper hand. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was a notification from Elijah Brooks, a well-known journalist from the LA Times. He had seen my message and wanted to run the story. Within minutes, the incident had gone viral. Guests were tweeting, photos were being uploaded, and suddenly hashtags like #PenthouseSlap and #Reynolds wedding scandal were trending. Vanessa's dream wedding was crumbling before her eyes. Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. And then, just when I thought the night couldn't get worse for them, it did. Sophia Grant, a prominent philanthropist and businesswoman I had represented in a major lawsuit last year, appeared at my side. She gave me a knowing smile. "Daniel, darling, I saw the whole thing. If you ever need funding for a new venture, call me. People like you, people who stand firm under pressure, are exactly who I like to invest in." Vanessa's jaw dropped. She had spent years trying to cozy up to Sophia's circle, desperate for their approval. And now Sophia was publicly aligning herself with me. By the time the wedding reception limped to an end, my family had been utterly humiliated. The judge's condemnation, the guests' shifting loyalties, the viral social media storm, it was all too much. Their perfect image had shattered beyond repair. 6 months later. The fallout was worse than I could have imagined, for them, not me. Ethan's firm cut ties with him after the scandal made headlines in Entertainment Weekly. Vanessa's social circle abandoned her. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who slapped her own brother on her wedding day for a penthouse. Mom and Dad's reputations in their Pasadena community plummeted. Invitations stopped arriving, friends stopped calling. And me. I thrived. With Sophia's backing, I expanded my practice into a thriving boutique firm. The penthouse overlooking the Pacific became not just my home, but a symbol of resilience. Sometimes, late at night, I'd stand by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the waves crash against the shore. I'd remember that slap, the laughter, the humiliation. And then I'd smile. Because in the end, they gave me the best gift of all. Freedom from their control. And a reminder that success is the sweetest revenge.